In the village of Umuodo, there lived a beautiful woman named Adaora. Her skin was deep brown, her hair long and black like the night. Her eyes sparkled like the stars, but the villagers feared her. They whispered behind her back, crossed the road whenever they saw her. They never invited her to their gatherings. Adora did not understand why. She had done nothing wrong, but the villagers knew a secret she wasn't aware of. She carried a terrible curse, a curse that made her different from everyone else, a curse that made people afraid. The villagers said Adora was born from the river goddess Iyamiri, and that no human could love her without suffering. People claimed that strange things happened whenever she cried, but Adora had never seen it herself. She had never cried in front of anyone. She had no reason to, until the night of her wedding. That was the night that everything changed, the night that turned her from a bride into an outcast, the night that made the villagers call her the woman who cried out snakes. Adora was married to Chike, the strongest hunter in the village. He was tall with arms like tree trunks and a voice as deep as thunder. The wedding was grand with drumming, singing and dancing that lasted till stars filled the sky. Adora was happy. She thought she had found love. But when the guests left and the night became quiet, Chike showed her a different side of himself. His voice was no longer warm. His hands, once gentle, were now rough. He pulled her close and whispered, "You belong to me now." Adora's heart pounded. Something about the way Chike spoke frightened her. He was not the kind of man she had married that morning. His grip on her wrist was tight, almost painful. She tried to pull away, but he held on. "You are my wife now," he said. "You will do as I say." Adora felt lump in her throat. Tears welled up behind her eyes, but she did not want to cry. She did not want to seem weak, but as Chike's grip tightened, she could not hold it any longer. A single tear rolled down her cheek. The tear landed on the mat beneath them, but instead of sinking into the woven fibers, something else happened. A small black snake slided out from the tear, twisting its tiny body and hissing. Chike stumbled back, eyes wide with shock. "What is this?" he gasped. Adora, just as startled, wiped her face, and another tear fell, and another snake appeared. This one was bigger, its scales gleaming in the dim candlelight. More tears spilled from her eyes, and with each one, another snake was born. The room filled with hissing, their small tongues flicking in the air. Chike screamed. He tried to run, but the snakes were too fast. They slided towards him, coiling around his legs, sinking their fangs into his skin. He swatted at them, but more kept coming. Adora sobbed, unable to stop the flood of tears, unable to stop the creatures that came with them. Chike's scream turned into goggles, his body twisting in pain, and then silence. When Adora opened her eyes, Chike was lying still, his body swollen, his face frozen in horror. The snakes had vanished, leaving behind nothing but their deadly bite marks. The next morning, the villagers found Chike's lifeless body. They gathered around Adora's hut, their eyes wide with fear. "She killed him," someone shouted. "She is cursed," another cried out. The elders arrived, their faces grim. "This is an abomination," said the oldest among them. "No woman should cry out snakes. She's not one of us." The villagers whispered among themselves, stepping further away from Adora. Adora's heart ached. She wanted to explain, but how could she? Even she did not understand what had happened. She had only cried, and he had died. The elders held a meeting that evening. They sat under the great Iroko tree, their voices low and serious. The villagers gathered around, waiting for their decision. "She cannot stay here," one elder said. "If she cries again, who else will die?" The chief nodded. "We must banish her." Adora fell to her knees. "Please," she begged. "I don't want to leave. I don't know why it happened," but the elders did not listen. The people of Umuodo believed in spirits and curses, and to them, Adora was dangerous. She had to leave before more people died. With only a small bundle of food, and a wrapper tied around her shoulders. Adaora was sent away. She walked out of the village, her feet dragging in the dust. The people she once called friends turned their backs on her. Even the children who had once played near her home now hid themselves behind their mothers. She wanted to cry, but she held it in. She could not risk calling forth more snakes. So without a single tear, she disappeared into the dark forest, leaving her home behind forever. The forest was alive with strange sounds of owls, hooted from the treetops. Unseen creatures rustled in the bushes, and the wind whispered through the leaves. Adaora walked carefully, listening to every noise. She had no home now, no one to protect her. She had to survive on her own. The night grew colder, and hunger gnawed at her stomach. She found a large tree with twisted roots and curled up against it. As she closed her eyes, she thought about Chicken. She had not meant to hurt him, but her tears had done what her hands could never have done. In the next morning, Adaora woke up to the golden sunlight filtering through the trees. She tried her stiff limbs and stood up, brushing dirt from her wrapper. She had to find food. She searched the forest, picking wild berries and digging up roots. She recognized as she chewed on a bitter fruit. She thought about her mother. Had she known about the curse? Had her mother hidden the secret from her all these years? Adaora clenched her fist. If her mother had known, why hadn't she warned her? Why had she let her grow up without knowing what she was? Days passed, and Adaora built a small hut from sticks and dried leaves. It was simple, but it kept her safe from the cold. She caught fish from a nearby stream, sharpening stones to use as knives. She learned which plants to eat and which ones could make her sick. But no matter how much she tried to live in peace in the forest, she was still alone. She missed the sound of laughter and the warmth of people. She sat outside her hut at night, staring at the stars, wishing she could go back to a time before the curse had awakened. One evening, as Adaora washed her face in the stream, she heard footsteps behind her. She spun around and her heart raced. An old woman stood there, her back bent with age, her eyes milky white. She wore a long faded wrapper and her feet were bare. Adaora gasped. No one ever came this deep into the forest. Who are you? She asked. The old woman smiled, her voice raspy but kind. I have been watching you, child, she said. I know your pain, I know your cause, and I know where it came from. Adora's breath caught in her throat. The old woman's voice was soft but powerful, like the wind. Before a storm, you know about my cause? She asked, stepping closer. The old woman nodded. Your mother made a bargain with Iyamiri, the river goddess. She wished for a child, as beautiful as the moon and as strong as the sun. But such gifts come at a cost. Adora's hands trembled. What was the cost? The old woman said, your mother did not know it at the time, but the goddess took something from you, your tears. Adaora frowned. But I still cry, she said. The old woman shook her head. No, child, you cry, but your sorrow is not yours alone. The river goddess changed your tears into life and death. Each tear you shed brings forth a serpent, and each serpent carries the weight of the bargain your mother made. Adora's heart pounded. Then how do I stop it? The old woman's eyes darkened. To break a curse, you must find its source. You must return to Iyamiri herself. Adaora shivered. She had heard of the river goddess, but never dared to seek her. The old woman pointed towards the east. Follow the river until you reach the place where the water glows at night. There you will find her. Adaora hesitated. What if the goddess refused to help? What if she asked for something evil in return? But she had no choice. She could not live like this forever, hiding in the forest, afraid to cry. Thank you, she whispered to the old woman, who smiled but said nothing more. When Adaora turned back to ask another question, the woman had gone, vanished like a mist. In the morning sun, Adaora set out at dawn, following the windy river. The journey was long, and the sun burned her skin. She walked for hours, her feet aching. She crossed bridges made of vines, climbed over fallen logs, and waded through shallow waters. As night fell, she saw it, the glowing river. The water shimmered with a strange blue light, casting airy shadows on the trees. She had never seen anything like it. This had to be the place. But now that she was here, fear crept into her. Would she help her or punish her? She knelt by the river, her hand stretched and trembling. "Great Iyamiri," she called, "I have come to seek your help." The water remained stilled. Nothing happened. Adora's heart sank. Had she come all the way for nothing? Then suddenly, the river moved. The water rose, twisting into a woman with skin as smooth as water, her hair flowing like waves, and eyes that shone like the moon. "You dare call upon me?" The goddess' voice echoed. Adora swallowed. "I need your help. I do not want this curse." Iyamiri tilted her head, a slow, airy smile forming. "Your mother asked for beauty and strength," Iyamiri said, cycling her like a tide, pulling her back before a wave crashes. She did not ask what price she must pay. Adora clenched her fist. "She did not know. You tricked her." The goddess' laughter rang through the air, cold and sharp. "I gave what was asked, and you have been blessed. Your tears create life." Adora shook her head. "They bring death," the goddess said. "A gift can be a curse, and a curse can be a gift. The balance must be kept." Adora's voice wavered. "Then tell me, how do I break it?" Iyamiri's glowing eyes studied her for a long moment. "There is only one way," she finally said. "You must give up all sorrow. If you never cry again, the snakes will die." Adora frowned. "Never cry? Not even once?" The goddess nodded. "Not for pain, not for joy, not for love. Your heart must be as dry as the desert." Adora felt her stomach twist. How could she live without sadness, but also without happiness? Could she truly give up every feeling? But if she didn't, she would never be free. She had to decide. Adora took a deep breath. "I will do it." Iyamiri smiled, lifting her hand. A bright light surrounded Adora, warm and heavy. She gasped as something pulled from deep within her chest, a glowing ember, small but powerful. And as soon as it left her body, she felt empty. Her heart was no longer heavy. The pain of losing her home, the fear of the curse, it was gone. But so was something else. A strange stillness filled her. She did not feel sad, but she did not feel anything at all. The goddess stepped back and said, "It is done." Adora blinked. She expected relief, but nothing came. No happiness, no excitement, just emptiness. "Go," Iyamiri said. "Your curse is gone." Adora turned to leave. The journey back to the forest felt strange. The birds sang, but their songs did not touch her heart. The wind blew through the trees, but she did not shiver. When she returned to her hut, she sat outside staring at the sky. She was free. No more snakes, no more fear. But why did she feel like she had lost something even greater? Little did she know. Years passed, and Adora returned to the village. The people, though cautious, welcomed her back. She married again. She had children and built a life, but something was missing. When her child took her first steps, she clapped but did not laugh. When her husband whispered loving words to her ears, she smiled, but she did not feel warmed. And when she saw someone in pain, she helped them, but she did not feel their sorrow, nor feel any compassion towards anyone. She was empty, untouched by joy or grief. She was free of the curse, but at what cost? One night, an old friend visited Adora. "Adora, you are here, but it is like you are not truly with us," she said. "Do you not feel love? Do you not feel sadness?" Adora hesitated. "I do not feel anything," she admitted. Her friend's eyes filled with tears. "Then, is this truly freedom?" The words echoed in Adora's heart, stirring something deep within. That night, she walked to the river, the place where it all began. The water was calm, reflecting the moon. She kneeled, staring into the deep, and then, for the first time in years, a tear fell. The moment the tear touched the river rippled, The wind howled, and the ground trembled. Something moved beneath the surface. A shadow slid, growing larger and larger until it rose a massive serpent, black as the void, its golden eyes burning with power. Adora gasped, stepping back. The snake stared at her, its tongue flinking. Then it lunged at her. She had no time to scream. The serpent wrapped around her, pulling her into the water. The last thing she saw was the moon, above, shining cold and distant. Then darkness upon darkness swallowed Adora. The river's coldness wrapped around her, pulling her deeper and deeper. She tried to scream, but no sound came. The giant serpent coiled around her body, squeezing tightly. Then suddenly, everything stopped. She opened her eyes and found herself standing in a place that was not the river, not the village, and not the world she knew. A strange swirled around her feet. The air was silent and heavy. Ahead of her, a tall figure stood, draped in flowing black robes. It was the goddess, Iyamiri. "You have broken the balance," Iyamiri said, her voice echoing like distance. "You gave up sorrow, yet you cried. The contract has been broken." Adora shivered. "I did not mean to. I did not want to feel anything." The goddess' glowing eyes narrowed. "And yet, you wish to be free. But freedom without pain is not life. It's emptiness." Adora's heart pounded. For the first time in years, she felt fear. Was this it? Would she be punished for breaking the contract? Would she be swallowed by the river forever? Iyamiri raised her hand. The mist around them swelled faster, forming shapes of the past. Adora saw her mother kneeling at the river's edge, begging the goddess for a child. She saw her own wedding night, the moment she cried for the first time, and when the curse turned into a serpent. She saw the years of loneliness, the feeling of emptiness. After the curse was taken, the images filled her mind, rushing like a river. Then the goddess spoke. "What do you wish for now, child?" Adora swallowed hard. She had to choose. Did she want to keep her emptiness or take back her sorrow? Adora thought of the laughter she could no longer feel, the love she could no longer embrace, and she thought of her children, her husband, her life that had felt distant, like a dream she could never touch. She did not want to live like this anymore. "I want to feel again," she whispered, "even if it means pain." Iyamiri tilted her head. "Are you certain? Once you take back your sorrow, the snakes may return." Adora took a deep breath. "I would rather cry and be cursed than live without feeling at all." The goddess smiled, a slow, knowing smile. She raised her hands, and the mist thickened, wrapping around at Adora like a cocoon. The warmth rushed through her, filling the empty space in her heart. Her chest tightened, her throat burned. Then a single tear fell, but this time no snake appeared. Instead, the mist cleared, and Adora found herself standing at the river's edge once again. The moon shone above her, and the water was still. She gasped, clutching her chest. She felt everything again: the joy, the pain, the sorrow, and the happiness. For the first time in years, Adora smiled. Adora stepped away from the river, her legs weak. She looked around the village. It was not far from her. She could see the glow of torches in the distance. She had been gone for only a moment, but she felt like she had been gone away for a long time. She took a deep breath and walked towards her home. Would the villagers still accept her? Would her family understand? She did not know, but now she had something she had not felt in a long time: hope. Even if the snakes returned, she was ready to face whatever come next. When she reached the village, people gasped. "Adora," someone cried out. "We thought you were dead." The chief came forward, his old eyes filled with suspicion. "Why have you returned?" Adaora met his gaze. "I have made peace with my cause," the villagers murmured. Some still feared her, but others looked at her with curiosity. She smiled, feeling the weight of her emotions once more. "I am no longer an empty woman," she said. "I am no longer afraid." The chief studied her for a moment, then nodded. Then let us see if the gods have truly set you free. The village healer stepped forward, holding a small knife. If you are truly free, you will not cry out snakes, he said. If you cry, we will know the curse remains. Adaora took a deep breath. They wanted to test her, and she understood. They appeared slowly. The healer pressed the sharp edge against her palm, just enough to draw blood. Pain pounded through her hand, and tears welled up in her eyes. She gasped as one rolled down her cheek and hit the ground. Nothing happened. The villagers watched, waiting. But no snake came. The curse was truly gone, and a collective sigh of relief filled the air. The villagers looked at each other, whispering. Some still seemed unsure, but many nodded, relieved that the curse has lifted. And the healer declared, the curse has been lifted. The chief raised his staff, then let it be known, Adaora is one of us again. Cheer erupted, children ran towards her, touching her hands and laughing. Women embraced her, welcoming her back. Adora's heart swelled up with joy. She was home for the first time. In years, she felt warm arms around her. She felt real love and joy. She had lost much, but she had gained something greater, a life where she truly belonged. Life in the village was different now. Adaora walked alongside the other women, pounding yams, weaving baskets, and laughing with them. She played with the children. Their laughter filled her heart. She sat with her husband under the moon, their fingers entwined. She was no longer an outcast, but more than that, she was no longer afraid of herself. She had faced a goddess and had given up her emotions, and also had fought back to get them now. She understood what it meant to be human, to feel pain, to feel love, and to live fully. One day, as she sat by the river, she saw a reflection in the water. Not just her own, but that of a woman with flowing hair and glowing eyes. Iyamiri, the goddess, smiled at her, but it was not the casual smile of before. She said, "You have learned the lesson of sorrow and joy. You understand the balance now." Adaora bowed her head. "Thank you," she whispered. Iyamiri nodded, then disappeared into repose. Adaora touched her own face, tracing the path where her tears had once called forth snakes. She was free, truly free. Years passed, and the story of Adaora, the woman who once cried out snakes, became a legend. Children whispered it around the fires, eyes wide with wonder and shock, but they did not fear her anymore. They saw her as a woman who had been tested by the gods and had won. Adaora lived a long life, surrounded by family and friends. She never forgot the lessons she had learned. She never forgot the pain and joy that must exist together. And though she still cried, her tears only held sorrow and love, never snakes again. One day, when Adaora was old, she sat by the river once more, watching the sunset. She had lived a full life, one of love and laughter, and of struggles and triumphs. She smiled as she saw her grandchildren playing nearby, their laughter echoing through the trees. She had once feared her tears, but now she embraced them. She wiped a tear from her cheek, feeling its warmth. She was no longer cursed. She was simply Adaora, woman, whole and free. The villagers continued to tell her story. Long after she was gone, they spoke of the woman who had faced a goddess, who had walked the path of sorrow and found her way back. Her name became a symbol of strength and resilience, and though the river still shimmered in the moonlight, whispering ancient secrets, no one feared it anymore. It was just water, just a river, and Adaora, she had become a legend that time could never wash away. And so in the village of Umuodo, where the earth drew deeply of old stories, Adaora still lived on, a tale of a woman who cried out snakes, who lost everything and who found her way back, not through magic, but through the power of her own heart. And whenever someone stood by the river and gazed its depth, they swore they could see her reflection, smiling back forever free. Thank you so much for watching. If you got to this point, please give this video a thumbs up It will help grow my small YouTube channel. Leave a comment in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts on this story. And if you haven't subscribed yet to my YouTube channel, do well to subscribe and turn on post notifications so you get notified when I post more interesting contents like this. Do well to go to my page. I have more interesting videos as well, and do yourself a favor by clicking on as many as you can and watch. And hope you enjoy the stories on my page. See you guys in my next video. Bye.